Okay, thanks very much. So uh, I have part of the early part of this talk is going to be sort of biographical, talking about the things that have gone well, mistakes I've made along the way, and so forth, and try to give you a flavor for the things that I think are helpful to know as you're getting started in research, and knowing that the formula is not the same for everybody. So this is if I knew then what I know now. And my conflict of interest disclosure, I don't invest in, consult for, or take remuneration from any healthcare or health science field companies. So this is just a journey back to my personal journey through things. And I'd say that my entry into research, into clinical research at this point, involved some planning, but a lot of it now looks absolutely nothing like what I expected when I started. And so if that's how it's starting to look for you, that's, I think, part of the way it happens. Um, and if you are just getting started, be prepared for that kind of thing to happen. So just uh, and I'm going to have a little wrestling match with the Epic clinical health record in my office because it's going to keep popping up, and I'll grab the mouse and stop it. So, I started in a blue collar family in Chicago. My dad was a butcher, my mom a food service manager. And I was sort of a kid who was curious about a lot of things. My family just thought I was a space alien, as I wrote here, because I didn't really behave like anybody else they knew in our family. Um, and all right, here we go with the. Um, and so uh, through when I was young, starting about third grade, I became kind of obese, and I had a really good friend, Roger. We hung out together. They named him Pudgy and me Pudgy too. And so I developed kind of an interest. I thought someday that since even from the age of 5, I thought I might be a doctor someday. Now I developed an interest in obesity science because I was experiencing it. So came out of high school fairly successfully and went on to college in a program that allowed me guaranteed acceptance to medical school, which was very, very nice. And I thought I am now on my way to an illustrious career in medicine and obesity science. And the artwork on here was all of my own making. So this depiction of getting my butt kicked was my own artwork. Um, and that's what happened in college. C grades in organic chemistry, that's always the thing that derails potential medical students. Similarly, physical chemistry. I got a D grade on an immunology midterm, though I got an A on the final and sort of managed to stay alive there. And I just figured that's it. I suck at science. And I'm going to forget that science career part. So I'll go on to my clinical career, and that's it. It was a shame, but that's the way it was going to be. So I started med school relatively young because I had this sort of special track that I went through. The medical school courses were going okay, and I saw an announcement for a summer research student grant program, and I thought, should I try that? Maybe one last time. I'm going to see if I can do this, even though all evidence was to the contrary. Um, and so I met my mentor in endocrinology, a guy named Larry Phillips. He's well into his mid to upper 80s and is still researching and doing practice at this point. But I met him at Northwestern University where I was a student. He's now at Emory. And he said, all right, I'll take you on as a summer student. And he agreed to show me how to write the two-page application for the student grant. You'll see the butt kick symbol there again and a lot of red ink on the document below. It took me 3 months meeting with Larry Phillips every week to learn how to fill out a two-page application. He put reading through everything, rewrote sentences, told me to take the example and rewrite it again and write it again and write it again. And so I thought, this is horrible. I suck at science writing, and this is not going to be for me. Um, and so let's see. Um, so Larry Phillips, so it turns out that it ended up getting funded, my application. And I went to work for Dr. Phillips, and he wore me out. I mean, he had really high expectations. Um, one day I asked if I could leave the lab early so I could visit my friends at the University of Illinois for the weekend. And this was a Friday, and he said, "Sure, you can leave by 5 if you want." So I said, okay, great. And I'll pick you up at 4:30 at the bus stop where I would come from and bring you to the lab so that you don't have to miss anything. Um, Any of the work. I said, great. So anyway, the graduated medical school. Turns out Dr. Phillips left Northwestern, went to Emory. Um, and surprisingly, after all was said and done and we gathered our data, this was a rat laboratory. Um, he said that he thought I had a knack for research and that I should consider pursuing it. Again, contrary to all the evidence that I saw in front of me. Um, so I thought, well, maybe I should think about research project during residency. That might be something. Maybe I should take this up again. I ended up matching. We have, the residents have a national matching program, a computerized matching program. I ended up matching. Uh, Good heavens, I don't know if I can move this out of here. No, okay. You can still see the list now. And it was brutal. It was a double butt kick because about 120 hours a week, no days off all year long, no holidays, no weekends. Lost 10 pounds my first year, and I thought I can barely survive being a physician. This is horrible. Forget research. That was that. Um, and then I went to my fellowship. I decided to go into endocrinology, and I arranged a fellowship in Vermont. The people were really nice when I interviewed there, among other places I'd interviewed, and it was beautiful. And the faculty were friendly. Kim, who's here and sitting at University of Vermont right now. Um, they were a little flaky, but they were pretty serious about their science and research, and they had a training grant to support me and a research project. And I thought, well, that's really nice. Shortly afterwards, they said, well, when are you going to start writing your grant for the rest of your fellowship? And I said, well, you have a training grant, right, that I can train on. They go, no. I mean, yes, but no. You're going to have to write your own grant. We want you off the training grant by next year, by your second year. I thought, oh no, they have expectations. And they told me to include tuition for coursework at the university and so forth. And I thought expectations are really difficult. And I'm not sure that this is something that I want to do. But some hard work. You can see the X's on the documents again. Those were my colleagues, my mentors at the University of Vermont, who slashed through everything a zillion times. But it paid off, and the grant was funded, and the project was underway. Um, and so the 3-year fellowship was completed. The research project was completed. We were studying at the time the effect of dietary protein restriction. Um, so normal weight maintaining diet, but restricted in protein because it was being used at the time to prevent kidney disease. So I studied it in people with diabetes who could get kidney disease just to see what the effects were on muscle and protein metabolism. At the end of it, I wrote a paper for my fellowship project. It was trashed by one good journal. We submitted to another one with sort of an equal impact journal, and they liked it a lot. And so I talked to a pediatrician faculty who said he had had the experience submitting a paper in pediatric radiology, I think it was. And he said that he submitted it to one journal who told him it was a piece of trash, and the next journal rated it article of the year. And he said, you know what? It did not deserve either one of those designations. Not trash and not article of the year. So he said, just don't worry about what they say about your work. Just do what you know is right and move forward. Um, okay. Why is this not? Okay. Um, so afterwards, I moved back to Chicago after 3 years staying on faculty at Vermont after my fellowship, was closer to family, and started up a laboratory. And it was nice. I was given mass spectrometry equipment for my laboratory and so forth. I had a would be able to get, I had startup funds to get started on my research before writing my next grant. Um, but the clinical research center they had was not as good as the one in Vermont. It was really pretty rudimentary. And they asked me if I would build a clinical research center for them. This is 3 years out of my fellowship. And I said, well, I think I'm a little young and inexperienced for this, so maybe you want somebody else. And they said, no, would you do it? And I said, all right, give me X amount of money in 3 years and I'll have a proposal written to go to NIH for this. And sure enough, we stuck to the timeline and did it. It was an 1,113 page grant when it was all on paper at that time, and piled into boxes and run to O'Hare Airport by our administrator to get it on a plane to get to NIH in time on a Sunday. And so it received fairly good reviews, and the site visitors liked the center that we had created, but they suggested that a more senior faculty person should direct it and not me. So I was asked the dean asked me to step down, and someone else took it over. And then I had to look at how much time I'd spent on it and realize that my own productivity in my own research project had slowed and was not what it ought to have been. And so after a time, I said, it's time for me to move on, and I moved to Maine. And I got offered a job by a friend here in Maine, and I was going to be full-time clinical. So research was gone. It was put in the dustbin or put on a shelf at least. Um, but I asked to work 4 days a week just in case some opportunity for research would pop up, or if I thought of something, and it would give me a little time to work on it. 10 years went by, and a colleague of mine, a well-known researcher, told me of a large NIH clinical trial that was being planned and said he thought we could compete for it, and asked if I would run the study site in Maine. And I'd never run a clinical trial before, so I said, sure, I'll agree to run it. Um, and we competed successfully to be a site, and the study was completed successfully. So 10 years later, chance favors the prepared mind. If you still want to do it, even though you have an interruption, you can get back to your research career. Not easy, but not impossible. And so more studies have come our way. And last year I stepped down from my clinical duties, and now working part-time entirely in research and teaching. So the lesson from the autobiographical part of it was, follow your curiosity, build a skill set, don't be afraid to compete, find like-minded colleagues, find a team and a research community, and opportunities will um, disappear only if you stop looking for them. So now, what advice, so that's my advice. What advice can we get from others? I stole this from the Lego company, as you can see. The at the consultation at Rivendell. So there are others, and I've given to Yvette a couple of papers that you can look at about the things that you will need personally and from those supporting you to launch a career in research. And here are some from the University of Virginia, and Yvette has the papers. If you want to see them, she can send you the PDF. But they came out with these 10 rules that you see in front of you. Take that step inside something that you think needs to be done, move toward it, even if it ends up being the wrong step and you have to change direction again. Reach out to scientific and professional mentors. Find a peer cohort, others like-minded who want to get started in research, and find out what they're doing and share experiences. Learn the inside institutional processes where you're working. Learn to manage people in your group, outside your group. Be vulnerable with your ideas, and what they mean by that is that an idea that you keep to yourself will end up being a bad idea most of the time. So when you have an idea for something you want to do, let it out there, even though it's going to get criticized, because that will make it a better idea. Consider diversity from the beginning, and by this they mean talk to all kinds of people, get advice from people of all walks. And for example, community engagement is a way that you can consider diversity from the beginning. Get opinions from uh, patients who might be able to give you insight into what you should do for your work. Um, try you have to balance your diversifying your research activity with maintaining some focus. That's difficult to do. You don't want to become distracted with a number of things, but you also don't want to be closed-minded. And then solicit and integrate feedback. The A group um, that was at University of Pittsburgh put together this paper where they interviewed young researchers. These are usually people who had gotten their first research grant, but there were some they interviewed who were not funded researchers and were trying to get funded. And they asked them what they thought would help them on their road to success. And they talked about what you can see in front of you here, networking skills, um, reframe negative experiences and I like the word reframe. That's a nice way of looking at the resilience of taking negative experiences and rejections in a way that develops your resilience and perseverance. And um, be assertive with what you need in terms of resources. Don't be afraid to ask. You may not get everything you want, but take ownership of your work. Develop a sense of autonomy, meaning that if you're paired to somebody who's a mentor, don't wait to be given instructions all the time by that mentor as to what you need to do next. Think of your own path, and then you use your mentor to help you get on that path. Um, Try to find personal and professional balance. If any of us can do that well, that it's good. And then dedicated mentors are important. We'll talk about that a little more, but and then um, find a place that looks like there's fertile soil for you to get into research, a place that supports it. And they have some, things you can read in the paper and in the slides about what these individual people that they interviewed had said verbatim. Um, and you can see things like the persistence and resilience. Thick skin was a hard thing to develop, but as you get critiqued more and more, you get thicker and thicker skin. Um, well, if um, if you give up, you never thicken your skin, but I've never been interested in giving up, this person says. Use feedback in a way that is helpful. And so the final advice from me, because we're getting to the point where we can talk about questions and answers. I mean, this is my personal experience, and it really reflects, I think, the similar statements from those in the two papers I mentioned. I'd say, you know, make a decision that you want to do this research. Um, you saw that along the way, I made a decision I was going to, and then I had some adverse experience, and I said, that's it, I can't do this anymore. But if you really made your decision that you want to do it, you'll come back, and that's what you'll need to do sometimes. Temper your heart and mind to handle critique. Use critique and appreciate it. It's hard to do, it hurts. But appreciate it. Thank people for putting red ink all over what you wrote, and move forward. Finding a group of colleagues that are also pursuing careers in research, I think, is very important. I think you need to bounce things off of each other and just have people that are your comrades, that can march along that path with you, and join a team of researchers. Very important. Um, I benefited from other people handing me opportunities that came up because I was part of a, a group, a team. And I think that they'll give you good advice, but they also may help you find opportunities. One thing that was not mentioned in some of the other publications is build a skill set. I really think it's important to try to develop yourself in something, whether it's taking statistics classes so that you understand epidemiology and statistics and so forth really well, or and I did that in my fellowship when I started my work in amino acid metabolism. I took a course in analytical chemistry. I audited the course because I was afraid. I wasn't as good as the chemistry grad students, but um, you know, learn something, develop skills that you can bring along with you. And if nothing else, if you have other people like technicians helping you with things, at least you'll understand what they're doing and quality control. I think that's important. When you find mentors, I'm going to quote, well, if not exactly quote, parrot Charlie Irvin, who's helping us run a Mentoring the Mentor program this month. He separates mentors into different types, and I would look for all of them, all three of them. A career mentor who will help you guide your choices of what you do next, what kind of funding application you may write, what kind of paper you should consider writing to move your career forward. A project mentor who has expertise in the subject matter of the thing you're studying to help you make sure that all the techniques you're using are well considered. And then sponsoring mentors, somebody who will help introduce you to other researchers, help you network, help you find other people that can help you. All of those functions are important. Be willing to grab opportunity when it falls in your lap. It may not be what you were planning, but if it looks really good and the people in your research team and your comrade team and so forth think it sounds like a good idea, go for it and don't let it go. Follow your curiosity, even if it deviates from your original plan, as long as it looks like it could be a fruitful area of work. It's risky, but it might help you find important questions to answer. And beware of mixing administrative responsibilities with your research. From experience, being a division chief or department chair is an honor, but it won't help your research. You'll have a lot of administrative things to do, and it'll divert your attention. Thank you, and good fortune to all.
Thank you so much for that. That was so much wisdom. And I'm just looking at the numbers of participants we have today, and I think you have some extra fans in the audience. So, does anyone have any questions to start off with? We have a few minutes before we start the case, and we'll have an opportunity to circle back to questions as well. I will start us off with, did you answer the questions the 5-year-old you had?
Oh gosh. You know, as a 5-year-old, I kind of knew my direction. I'm not sure I had the questions yet. I was going to be either a doctor or a skin diver. There used to be a Lloyd Bridges had a show in which he was always fighting criminals and subduing them underwater for some reason. I'm not sure how it was. I thought that looked like it would be fun,
That was your
but
second choice?
that
Yeah.
was my second choice. Um, but when it came to my being an obesity researcher, I didn't end up doing that just because the nutrition research that fell in my lap was something that interdigitated with what others in my group were doing. The
Mm.
techniques fit. I adapted what I was going to do to the techniques they knew and could help me with. So I did dietary protein rather than maybe dietary excess or things that might have been part of obesity. But being part of that nutrition group helped me stay in that area clinically. Um, so I got my answers by doing clinical work there, but my research went a slightly different direction.
Awesome. Joseph, you have a question.
I remember Sea Hunt as well.
Yes, the hunt.
My question, because I'm part of the Northern New England Co-op for Practice and Community-Based Research Network, which is more primary care focused, is how do you suggest eliciting community-based questions for research?
Um, Community-based questions, and by that you mean that answers that you might get from your research which that would be applicable to and helpful to an entire community.
Right. For example, one was done through Maine Health to a significant degree in Norway, Maine, and it was focused around adverse childhood experiences.
Mhm.
And it had a lot of buy in from the community, and that made the research better and
Yeah.
also made it more grant worthy. Increasingly, grants are going to have a focus on community involvement because, as you obviously know, grants are increasingly competitive.
Yeah. I think I would say that I think there are a lot of things that are important from community where you would get support and and a lot of advocates within the community. I think going with something that you know and have experience with is always helpful. It helps you connect with those people that you with whom you're working. Um, so, and are you in a position where you maybe have a set of your own questions but aren't sure of which things might be taken up, where the
Oh,
mentor would be
sure.
taken
I'm
up by the
always
community?
fishing for community members to speak up and join in with enthusiasm. But I find it difficult.
To know exactly what would be popular and helpful and so forth, and what other people who would be reading grants would like to see. Oh gosh, I'm not sure that f fashionable is always necessary. It's always nice to have something fashionable that people are talking about, so that people are interested in funding it. But I think in what field are you in, if I may? I'm sorry. As
Well,
part
right now I'm
Mhm.
school physician,
Yeah.
and we're focusing on child and adolescent mental health
Yes.
significantly because health and wellness has been um, more focused on nutrition and exercise, and not
Yeah.
so much on mental health, first aid, and suicide is a leading cause of death
Yes.
among kids.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not an expert in that. I would expect that you can learn from the kids, frankly, and that what they tell you about is, something that they think about when they wake up, when they get together with friends, is probably something that they tell their parents about, probably something they complain to their teachers about. Or if not, because they're keeping it to themselves, that may be the perfect thing to study because you'll bring some of those things out in the open. Um, but
Well,
yeah,
that's exactly what I'm sort of pushing right now, which is called peer support
yeah.
and peer support training of mostly adolescents to give them a sense of how to help one another and then bring it to a trusted adult if it seems to rise to a level of concern.
And I can put a plug in here too, and you probably have, being in Norway, worked with Emma Daybranch, who is one of our community engagement navigators, and the NNECTR does have a community engagement core. If anyone's interested in how you could tap into the needs of the community, most states also have a needs assessment, a community health needs assessment, but there's many different ways to kind of check on the pulse of um, where community members might be or what community-based organizations are working on. So you could have that network that you talked about, Erwin. You won't want to be necessarily doing this on your own. You want that network beyond research, but also in practice. So I think that it's a great question. And
Yeah.
I'm watching the time a little bit, so I'm going to want to move over to Emily. But I do want to, there's several projects like that going on, and maybe in a future Echo session we could cover some of those. But yeah, I think a lot of your advice translates into that area as well.
Yeah, your kids are telling you what they need, and I think you can, there'll be a constituency for that, those things.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And if you have, keep ruminating. If you have questions, there'll be a chance to ask them again after we hear our case.